Welcome everyone, my name is Dr. Alison Torn and I'm a Senior Teaching Fellow at Leeds Trinity University, leading on online and blended delivery. This presentation is going to look at integrating the lessons learned from the past academic year around building a sense of belonging for students and staff, so we have a cohesive and co-constructed community of learning. I'm going to discuss how, from our experience, social connectedness is key to successful engagement, positively influencing on the well-being of students and staff, the learning experience, and impacting on both progression and retention. In regards to the session's aims, I want to firstly address the challenges of building belonging in large cohorts. This has been a significant challenge for me and many other colleagues as we teach to large 200 plus cohorts. Thinking about how we could A, help the students feel a sense of connection with their cohort and the university, and B, replicate the kind of support we would offer in person was a key focus for us. Second, I'll present a model which some of you may be familiar with, Garrison and Colley's Community of Inquiry model, which highlights the interaction between three forms of classroom presence: teaching, social and cognitive. Of particular interest when planning our teaching and conducting research on student and staff online experience this year has been a more recent version of this model, which places social presence as a pivotal factor for engagement and cognitive sense making. Third, I'll outline some of the examples from my own teaching of how I scaffolded both social and cognitive engagement. And finally, I'll end the presentation by introducing some of our preliminary research findings on the student and staff experience in online learning in relation to connectedness. Coming into this academic year, we had three key challenges. The first was the size of our cohorts. Our psychology programmes are the largest cohorts within our university, with over 200 students per year group, so we needed to consider methods of engagement and support for these cohorts. Related to this is a broad demographic within cohorts. Like many other programmes, our students drew from wide age groups, 18 to over 50s, that brought in a wide range of life and work experience and had different personal demands on them that potentially impacted on their ability to engage. For example, some of them were part-time workers and parents homeschooling. Our second challenge was a new technology brought in by the university over the summer months before the start of the academic year. Whilst extensive staff training and support was given over the summer on the use and integration of different platforms, for example MS Teams and Moodle, there was the additional challenge of getting students quickly up to speed with using unfamiliar technology, particularly around navigating the different systems. Our final challenge was around academic staff skills and confidence in using technology, being mindful of the additional workload involved in preparing teaching for delivery via online platforms, together with the personal circumstances some staff were in, for example, as carers or homeschooling parents. Working in a small university with around 4,000 on-campus students, building our community and bringing about greater inclusivity is central to our strategic plan and highlighted as a unique selling point. The definition on this slide underpins a community of inquiry framework and reflects our university ethos around community, with connection, belonging and comfort key to developing a strong social presence. I want to briefly outline the community of inquiry model, which some of you will be familiar with, others it may be new to. Developing meaningful communities of learning has been a focus in higher education and is tied in with developing a constructivist and collaborative learning environment. The Community of Inquiry framework is a dynamic model that looks at how we create and sustain a community of learners in an online learning environment. The model is formed by the intersection of three elements: social, cognitive and teaching presences. Whilst much research has focused on the interaction between the teaching and cognitive presences in developing higher order critical thinking skills through, for example, discursive and reflective activities, far less attention has been paid to social presence and its impact on the learning community. Social presence centres around developing a shared social identity that is pivotal to group cohesiveness and the development of in-group norms. Despite social presence being identified as a core component of the Community of Inquiry model, being influential in informal settings and new environments, so for example in this academic year new online environments, research has suggested that it has had little impact on learning, being associated more with student satisfaction. However, more recent research has indicated that social presence is a prerequisite for deeper learning interactions, impacting on both the teaching and cognitive elements of the model, so that all presences are essentially social. This research suggests social presence is highly valued by students, increases their confidence and comfort in speaking up and expressing ideas. There are 3 elements to developing social presence. Firstly, affective, so the expression of emotions, humour, self-disclosure, all of which support interpersonal relationships that are the foundation of the educational experience. This is about being authentic and being human, so the use of emotional expressions, including emoticons, disclosing our own fears and anxieties, an element of we're all in this together can help establish trust. Second, open and purposeful communication, which occurs through the recognition and encouragement of reflective practice and participation. Third, group cohesion, so the simple things that we can do to create a strong, inclusive group identity, such as addressing students by name and using inclusive pronouns. I'm going to give you some examples of how I, as a module coordinator leading a small tutor team of 3, embedded these social presence elements to meet some of the challenges of delivering online to large cohorts new to online learning. One of the first things the module tutor team did with students prior to teaching starting was to create a welcome flip grid. Tutors started this with a short 3-minute video which introduced themselves and the module, but also gave some personal reflections. So, for example, staff could introduce their home workspace if they wish to, give a personal highlight from the summer, perhaps share information on how home working was going for them. The aim was that these videos were professional, but also allow the students to personally connect with the tutors, to see them as people and not just staff, so help establish trust. Students were encouraged to upload their own 1-minute video of a personal highlight from the summer, or perhaps something they were looking forward to in the module. Being on a large module, students could also get to know each other, and even though they were in 3rd year, meet students they'd not met before. Flipgrid helped to set the scene for a virtual weekly cafe, which we ran in the module. This was optional, so not part of the scheduled teaching, although it was actually timetabled, students didn't have to attend. It was a space where students could hang out with the tutors and bring their coffee and breakfast. It was a 9 AM slot. I know, it was early. In all honesty, we weren't expecting many students to attend, but we got between about 30 to 80% engagement each week. Whilst this was an informal chatty space where we talked about anything from pets to breakfast choice, it also became a space where students started discussing key debates within the module. So social engagement became a platform for cognitive engagement and development. It also very much became a supportive space for students, particularly for those feeling isolated due to the pandemic. To enable both social connectedness and cognitive engagement, we set up structured small study groups where students could connect both within sessions and outside of sessions. We gave students a choice of being in a small study group with people known to them, again to reduce the sense of isolation, or being more randomly allocated. There was about a 50-50 split in the large cohorts between those students who wanted to be with people known to them and those students who wanted a group with random allocation, and this was kind of pre-Teams breakout rooms, so semester 1. These groups had their own private space on the module Teams channel and were supported by one of the tutors. While students had to work together on weekly tasks within these study groups, collaborating on and developing a pool of shared resources, they also became an important space for peer support. Finally, surrounding all of this were some clear expectations of engagement, which included what we expected of them as students, but also what they could expect from us as tutors. These expectations not only related to their engagement with learning, but also related to everyone's responsibility to create a safe online space, being tolerant, compassionate, respectful, and considerate. Looking at student feedback, students were extremely positive about their online learning experiences, particularly in relation to how social connectedness was structured into sessions, which had a ripple effect upon their learning. These quotes come from our module evaluations. So the first quote says, "I've never felt comfortable to talk or message the chat during lectures, but ever since this approach of teaching, I have felt more comfortable in chipping in with my thoughts." So you can see here how building in some social spaces helps students feel more comfortable and confident in expressing their thoughts and contributing to the class. The second quote says, "The debate's interaction with peers, despite circumstances, allowed us to delve into critical thinking, as well as our tutor interacting and motivating us to read even in times when we were all probably going through so much externally." Again, the second quote shows how the structured study spaces enabled the development of critical thinking as students used each other to trigger and explore their thinking, and as this student described, delve deeper. The final quote, "The morning cafe was one of my favourite things to turn up to. Every week we'd turn up and just talk about how we were doing. There was no pressure to talk about assignments and work and stuff. It was like meeting up for a coffee. We'd all go grab breakfast, we'd grab a coffee, and we'd sit on camera together and have a chat. And I'm so happy that that was set up. It really helped me kind of keep up that social contact. Having that social contact has been an absolute lifesaver." This last quote talks about the impact of the cafe as an unstructured, informal space that for some was the only point of social contact and became, as this student says, a lifesaver. As part of evaluating the impact of our online delivery, we conducted a qualitative research study with students and staff across the university that focused on the development of communities of learning. What you see on this slide are the preliminary findings from the student focus groups. Our student participants described this year as engaging in a journey of connection. So moving from left to right on this diagram, connecting with peers and tutors was a challenge at the start of the academic year, with technology initially impeding connection. But as students went through this journey, technology enabled connection. And they started to use different platforms for different forms of engagement. So Teams and Moodle was primarily used for education and learning. WhatsApp was peer only and used only in social connection or asking kind of more informal questions around learning amongst their peers. Linked to the challenges, students engaged in a process of searching for connections, and this related not only to how to connect, so familiarising themselves with technology and platforms, but also when and where to connect. So there was this search for spaces and time for connection. Space was central to connection. Many of these spaces were structured by the tutor, as I've outlined, a cafe, drop-ins, perhaps structuring extra time before and at the end of formal scheduled teaching sessions, and private small study groups. This set the groundwork for student-initiated spaces, and a shift was observed where the tutor-initiated space became more learning-focused and the student spaces became more social-focused. These really became the foundations, or as one student participant said, the building blocks for learning. Students described social connectedness as an absolute necessity, stating that shared learning was only possible if there was a firm foundation of social connectedness. Finally, the journey of connection culminated with learning. Their shared experiences and connectedness as a peer group enabled cognitive engagement and learning. Fundamentally, these opportunities for connection had to be structured and in the early weeks facilitated by the tutor. I've reached the end of this presentation. These are some of the key references that have underpinned the theoretical approach we've taken to the building of social connectedness and to our research study as well. Thank you for taking the time to listen, and please do get in touch with me via email or Twitter if you'd like to follow up with any questions or discussion.